Hey fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications. All right, folks, this morning indictments came down. 50 people charged, including 33 parents. No kids were charged in a major college bribery scandal. I've been waiting all day to talk about this story. None of these folks are black. Some $25 million in fraud. Folks paying upwards of $1 million to get they dumbass kids in elite universities. And I'm calling them dumbass kids for a reason, because they couldn't get in anywhere else. Here is a U.S. attorney from Boston, Andrew Lelling.
Today we have charged 33 parents nationwide with hiring Singer's Group to defraud testing companies and/or various universities. These parents are a catalog of wealth and privilege. They include, for example, CEOs of private and public companies, successful securities and real estate investors, 2 well-known actresses, a famous fashion designer, and the co-chairman of a global law firm.
And the real victims in this case are the hardworking students who did everything they could to set themselves up for success in the college admissions process, but ended up being shut out because far less qualified students and their families simply bought their way in.
At the center of the scandal is William Singer, a well-connected admission advisor. He is pled guilty, and is he singing to the feds. He took in some $25 million between 2011 and 2018. Here's how this whole crooked operation worked. They faked sports resumes, bribed coaches to get kids in as recruits on things like volleyball, tennis, or even crew. I know, we don't do crew. Okay, they bribed SAT test proctors to provide right answers or let smarter kids substitute. In addition to that, what they also did, some of them even had their kids qualify as for special education, which gave them more time in a private setting to take the test. And that's where you would even have grades, scores change. Now, the schools: Wake Forest, Yale, Stanford, University of Southern California, University of Texas, Georgetown, UCLA, University of San Diego, and others. Now, among the folks charged, actresses: Felicity Huffman, you've seen her Real Housewives. Also, Lori Loughlin played Aunt Becky from Full House. Yeah, Aunt Becky in trouble. Husband is fashion designer Massimo Giannulli. Now, check this out, y'all. You know your daughter's dumb as hell. They paid $500,000 to get 2 of their daughters into USC. Now, one of them is a YouTube star, Olivia Jade. Now, this is what she had to say last year with regards to college.
I don't know how much of school I'm going to attend, but I'm going to go in and talk to my deans and everyone and hope that I can try and balance it all. But I do want the experience of like game days, partying. I don't really care about school, as you guys all know.
Okay. After she did that, folks lit her up on social media. She came back and apologized a couple of days later. But y'all, her mama now facing jail, and her daddy prison time. And she said, I ain't trying to go to class. I don't care about school. I want to go for game days and parties. Your ass could have went to game day and parties without me dropping $500,000 for you and your dumb sister. Other folks charged include a hedge fund partner, the head of a major global law firm. One family paid $1.2 million to get their kid into Yale with a fake athlete scam. The coach took hundreds of $1,000s in bribes. Now, folks, here's the deal here, okay? You talk about this whole scandal here. This is nothing new. The reality is white folks been dropping lots of money for years to get their kids into school. In fact, in the news conference today, the U.S. attorney even made reference to this wasn't basically paying for buildings. They were actually bribing people, including one senior USC athletic department official. Now, why is this significant? Because the reality is you got Jared Kushner, who's sitting in the White House. His daddy basically bought his way into Harvard. And if he really want to be honest, Donald Trump, daddy bought his way into Wharton. Now, you didn't have a situation like bribes, but we know these other parents who have done this. But see, I find all of this quite delicious. Because remember that little white girl, Mary Fisher? Remember the one who sued the University of Texas because she said some minority folks, black kids and Latinos, got into the university because of race. That's why she didn't get in. Went all the way to the Supreme Court and she was crying. She had to go to the University of Michigan. And then they found out that there were some white kids who had worse grades than hers who got into the University of Texas. I wonder what she's got to say about this here. And we also have people who love to make these comments about affirmative action and you don't belong here. But we've always known a bunch of white kids who bought their way into universities because mama and daddy had a checkbook. Now, 15 years ago, 2004, at the Uni Journalists of Color Convention, President George W. Bush was there. At the time, the University of Michigan affirmative action case was making its way through the court system. It had gotten to the Supreme Court. He was asked questions by 4 people, all of us members of minority journalism associations. I was chosen to represent the National Association of Black Journalists. At the time, had just taken over as executive editor of the Chicago Defender. We talked about affirmative action, but I asked Bush a question about legacy, which nobody ever likes to bring up. Press play.
You said, quote, quotas. You said, quote, quotas are an unfair system for all, unquote, with regards to your opposition to affirmative action.
No, whoa. With regard to my opposition to quota systems.
To quotas, okay. But I've never heard you speak against legacy. Now, the president of Texas A&M, Robert Gates, said that he would not use race in admissions, and then he later said he would not use legacy. If you say it's a matter of merit and not race, shouldn't colleges also get rid of legacy? And because that's not based upon merit, that's based upon if my daddy or my granddaddy went to my college.
Yeah, I thought you were referring to my legacy.
Y'all just hear Bush? I thought you were referring to my legacy. Okay? Bush is about to tell on himself, y'all. Press play.
That's why I allowed you to go ahead and bring it out.
Yeah. Well, in my case, I had to knock on a lot of doors to follow the old man's footsteps.
Daddy played baseball at Yale. He had to knock on some doors? No. Daddy knocked on some doors to get son into Yale and also into Harvard Business School, because we all know George W. Bush didn't have the grades. Continue.
No, if what you're saying is there going to be special treatment for people? We're going to have a special exception for certain in a system that's supposed to be fair? I agree. I don't think there ought to be.
So the colleges should get rid of legacy?
Well, I think so, yeah. I think it ought to be based upon merit, and I think it also be based upon... Yeah. And I think colleges need to work hard for diversity. No, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. You said against affirmative action is what you said. You put words in my mouth. What I am for is diversity.
I just read the speech, Mr. President.
What speech?
In terms of when you came out against the Michigan affirmative action policy.
No, I said I was against quotas.
So you support affirmative action but not quotas?
I support colleges affirmatively taking action to get more minorities in their school.
That's a long headline, Mr. President.
I support diversity. I don't support quotas. I think quotas are wrong. I think quotas are wrong for people.
But
so do a lot of people.
But just to be clear, you believe that colleges should not use legacy?
I think colleges ought to use merit in order for people to get in, and I think they ought to use a merit system like the one I put out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
Now, the next day, the New York Times had an article about that exchange. And what ended up happening, you had parents, you had folks who were graduates of places like Harvard and Yale who lit the phone lines up saying, are y'all going to change the legacy policy after what Bush said yesterday? The reality is they did not. But legacy has been a way in which white kids who do not have the grades, but because mama and daddy went to those schools, that's how they have been able to get into these elite institutions. This scandal is blowing the lid on this. And it's not just this case. Now the question then becomes, how are white folks using their money to bribe their way essentially through other means to get their kids into not just the elite universities, but frankly, any university. All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, y'all, calling all HBCU alumni, students, and leaders, including Black Jaguars at Southern. Enter the Ford Motor Company HBCU Mobility Challenge and win $25,000 for your school. Building on their long-term support of HBCUs, Ford is looking to improve mobility in HBCU communities through innovative solutions. The winning program will receive a grant of up to $25,000 to implement their proposal. The deadline to apply is March 31st, 2019. Go to FGB.Life right here, FGB.Life for more information and to apply. Ford goes further in our community. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.